Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith here with a low effort guide to how to be a low effort Dragoon and still do pretty well. In this guide I will teach you the basics of Dragoon and then work up from there as we go into slightly more and more advanced tactics. As for the most advanced, well, I don't use those so I can't really talk on them. But I will get you up to about 95% power. That last 5% is native to the Dravinians. They're the secrets that were lost to time, and you can only get them by drinking dragon blood, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, let's get to it. Dragoon is a pretty straightforward melee DPS job to me, but I understand that a lot of people get confused by it, so let's break it down. Your core GCD rotation is True Thrust. It has 9 buttons. It's True Thrust, Vorpal Thrust, Heaven's Thrust, Fang and Claw, Wheeling Thrust. That is one half of your loop. And True Thrust, Disembowel, Chaotic Spring, Wheeling Thrust, Fang and Claw is the other half of your loop. You will always start by going Disembowel, Chaotic Spring, as Disembowel adds your personal damage buff that you want to have full upkeep on, and your dot you want to have full upkeep on. Chaotic Spring and Wheeling Thrust are rear positionals, Fang and Claw is a side positional. Basically, looks something like this. You do 1, I have this on Shift 2, Shift 3, Shift 4, 4. That's one loop. True Thrust will turn into Raiden Thrust when you execute a combo of Wheeling and Fang and Claw, so we Raiden, Vorpal, Heavens, Fang and Claw, Wheeling Thrust. And then when we execute our second Raiden Thrust, we get a Whirlwind Thrust. That is a line AoE you get for stacking 2 of these Eyes of the Dragon. Technically you can save it up until your next use of Raiden Thrust and you won't lose anything. We'll get into that later. So now let's reset Enmity. And get to talking about the rest of it. So that's your main GCD combo. You will be doing that loop of Disembowel, Chaotic Spring, Wheeling, Fang Claw, Vorpal, Heaven's Thrust, Fang Claw, Wheeling, the entire fight. You should not be using any other GCDs in your core rotation. You should always be doing the loops because building up Whirlwind Thrusts, having full uptime on Disembowel buff, Chaotic Springs dot, and then buffing as many strikes of Heaven's Thrust as you can get under full buffs, we'll get to that later, is what you're going to be doing. Core GCD, that gets you about 50% of the way there. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Off globals. Well, actually, first I'll mention your AoE. You have Doomspike, Sonic Thrust, Carthan Torment. Carthan will turn Doomspike into Heaven Spike, I think. I forgot exactly what it's called. But basically, it's kind of like the Raiden Thrust version of True Thrust. You use it, you get an eye, you get 2 eyes, you get a Whirlwind Thrust. It charges up Whirlwind Thrust faster because you get a charge every 3 GCDs instead of every 5. But you're not going to want to use it on single target. Makes a fantastic AoE combo, though. And then you have Piercing Talon. If for some reason you can't get into melee range of the boss, use Piercing Talon. Back in my day, you used to have to hit the positionals for Wheeling and Fang and Claw in order to get a Raiden Thrust. You don't have to do that anymore. Positionals are just worth 40 potency each. Still want to do them, though. Now, let's bring that 50 to 70%. You're off globals. So, we have High Jump. It is a very fast jump, which will unlock Mirage Dive. You have Spine Shatter Dive. It is a slightly slower jump that brings you to the target. High Jump brings you to the target and then back to your initial position. Dragonfire Dive, same thing as Spine Shatter Dive, but 2-minute cooldown instead of 1 minute. Only 1 charge instead of 2. It's an AoE and it deals more damage. Mirage Dive is just an off global that does damage. It gives you a point to your Dragon Gauge. Once you have 2 Dragon Gauges, you're able to enter your Stardiver window, which we'll go into later. Gear Skogul is a line AoE 30-second cooldown. Same cooldown as High Jump. You use it, it doesn't straight line. So, for instance, your off globals will look something like this. Gear Skogul, High Jump, Mirage Dive, Spine Shatter, Dragonfire. And once we get a second eye, I guess these are scales, not eyes. Once we get a second eye, we will, Gear Skull will change to Nastrand. Nastrand has a 10-second cooldown, and you have a 30-second window to use it, so you can get 3 out. You can also get a Stardiver out during that time. Now let's reset Enmity while I talk about... actually, let me just charge it up. Charge it up, and show it off. We use that, Nastrand. It's just a red version of Gearskogel. Stardiver, you jump up, you use that. So, that's the basics so far. What are these other fun buttons? We have Lance Charge, 10% damage buff for 20 seconds every minute. Use it every minute. Battle Litany increases crit rate of self and nearby party members 10%. Use it when you can get the full party buff. It's a 2-minute cooldown. Another 2-minute cooldown is... Let's reset Enmity so I don't have to listen to battle music. Another 2-second cooldown is Dragon Sight. You pick a party member, you give them 5%, and you get 10% damage. Stacking with Lance Charge, of course, stacking with all the other buffs. You want to give this to your highest DPS party member. That'll be your other melee if there's another melee. Other than that, it'll be probably your caster and then your ranged. But yeah, that is all the buttons. That will get you 50 to 70% of your damage capacity. Now, let's try for something a little bit more advanced. How do we actually play Dragoon? Well, first thing to know about Dragoon, and the most important thing to know about Dragoon, like I said, your global cooldown is a stable loop. It is a static loop. This is not something that you will ever pause or adjust based on party buffs. However, you have Life Surge, which only activates on weapon skills, so it will only buff these 9 abilities. It buffs them by making it a guaranteed crit, and by giving a lifesteal effect, kind of like if you'd used Bloodbath. That guaranteed crit is really nice. Use it on your most powerful weapon skill, in this case, Heaven's Thrust, 480 potency. Second best thing you can get it on is a Wheeling or a Fang Claw for 300. Yeah, nothing else quite adds up. I guess technically you could do it on a Chaotic Spring for the same effective potency, but it does not increase any damage from the damage over time. So you'll generally want to use it on Heaven's Thrust all the time. I will get into more advanced talks about Life Surge later. Anyway, your off globals are what your damage comes from in terms of where you line it up. Because your GCD rotation is fully static, you want to buff your off globals. All of that starts with the opener, so here we go. I will explain it, and then I will perform it, because trying to talk through it, it's a lot of buttons to press all at once. You start with True Thrust. You will then drink a potion if you are using potions. I will not be drinking a potion for this demonstration. Then Disembowel. Then you will activate Lance Charge and Dragon Sight on one of your allies. You will need to target an ally, use it, tab back to the boss. Some people set up a macro for this. Then you will Chaotic Spring, use Battle Litany, and use Gearskogel. Then you will Wheeling Thrust, use High Jump, and if you have a 2.5 or at least like 2.48, 2.47 I think barely works, but it might clip, then you can Dragon Fire after your High Jump. Otherwise, Mirage Dive after your High Jump. Then you will Fang and Claw, use Dragon Fire or Spine Shatter if you haven't, and Mirage Dive. Now note, double weaving as a Dragoon is hard. Because all of your jumps have animation lock, you will need to be very careful. Use them as soon as you can, and you will barely squeak by with a double weave. The only abilities that are easy to double weave are your buffs, Gearskogel, Mirage Dive, Whirlwind Thrust, and debatably High Jump. So double weave with those. Don't try to double weave with Spine Shatter and Dragonfire. You can if you're really close and you have a 2.5, and you cannot double weave with Stardiver. It takes the entire duration between a GCD. do not double weave Stardiver. But yes, once we get the Fang Claw, then we Raiden Thrust, we start using up the rest of our Spine Shatters, Vorpal Thrust, Life Surge to buff up Heaven's Thrust, and then Fang Claw Wheeling, and then we get our Wormwind Thrust. Our Wormwind Thrust unfortunately comes in just after our Lance Charge, Battle Litany, and Dragon Sight go away, so this will not be under your own personal buffs. It may be under some party buffs, so use it as soon as you get it. If you have a particularly fast skill speed, particularly low GCD, you might be able to squeeze in Wormwind, but that comes at the cost of being unable to double weave pretty much anything outside of the skills that I mentioned earlier, your buffs, Wormwind, Gear Skogul, and Mirage Dive. So yeah, let's take a look and see what an opener looks like. That potion, that, this, make sure you target someone else, that, this, jump and dive, do that, I have just enough that I can double weave, do that. Now, you wouldn't normally get the Wormwind Thrust there because I already had one eye, so that's a mistake. Here's where you would Wormwind. And that just continues on. Also, I have already messed up by using the wrong one. However, this is good to know. If you mess up, finish the combo, you'll still collect your scale, and you can continue. So what you want to do is then, when it comes up at 30 seconds, Gear Skogul, High Jump, Mirage Dive. This is taking you up towards that 90%. Because if you time this out right, which I didn't, but if you did, then your Lance Charge will come up just in time for that. You get your next Life Surge under Lance Charge with Heaven's Thrust. Do this, and you have Gear Skogul. I use Gear Skogul Nastrin right away, and then High Jump Mirage Dive, and then Stardiver, just to make sure that I can get a second Gear Skogul under Lance Charge. Second Nastrin, not Gear Skogul. And then you can use Spine Shatter under Lance Charge, and there you go. That is the 90% of your power. And you will continue to do that so long as you do that with good timing, every Nastrin Stardiver window will be under at least Lance Charge, if not the full suite of 2-minute buffs. And you are set for the entire fight, so long as there's no interruptions in raid buffs, so long as there's no forced downtime, so long as you don't die. Dragoon drifts incredibly easy, and I will get to that in a minute, and that minute is now. Dragoon drifts very easily. Why? Because everything that it lines its buffs up around is around its off-global window. Gear Skogul, High Jump, Mirage Dive, into the Stardiver window. There is no saving Gear Skogul High Jump. You can save Mirage Dive for up to 15 seconds, but you cannot save Gear Skogul and High Jump, because those are 30-second cooldowns. Every time those come up, if you delay, that's pushing everything back. And over the course of a full fight, that is gonna delay quite a bit. Also, if you ever can Gear Skogul, but can't High Jump, or High Jump, but can't Gear Skogul, that's going to mess you up as well, because then you're going to have drift. Now, why do we Gear Skogul before High Jump? Well, that's because it flows better. Because then if we always Gear Skogul before High Jump, we will always line up our Stardiver window with our 60-second buffs. If you try to High Jump, Mirage Dive, then Gear Skogul, then you are always offset, and you're never getting your Stardiver up with your 1-minute buffs. That's a problem. So, what else can we do? If we drift, sucks to be you. You can rescue one lost Mirage Dive by sacrificing it and switching to do High Jump first, Mirage Dive, then Gear Skogul. So if you're offset by 30 seconds and you find out mid-fight, I'm not lining up my Stardivers with my buffs, you can switch that and you can get your Stardiver back under your buffs. It can potentially cost you a Stardiver window, but it's better than having all your Stardivers no longer under all your raid buffs. Do your due diligence, fix what's broken. So that brings us up to 90%. Where is that 90 to 95 to 100? Well, activating with raid buffs, not drifting, making sure that you time this out, making sure that you life surge your Heaven's Thrusts. There are a couple extra points of optimization you might want to consider. Some people would recommend life surging the first Fang and Claw, because that's the first 300 potency move that's under full raid buffs, and that gets life surge on cooldown faster, so you can then life surge pretty much most Heaven's Thrusts you would be able to, and the only one you miss, I think, is one that's like not under a raid buff. So a guaranteed crit on a 300 technically is worth more than a guaranteed crit on a 480 that's not under raid buffs, just because of how powerful raid buffs are, especially if you have like a Dancer. Your results may vary. Second, you have 2 charges of Spine Shatter Dive. You can technically save Spine Shatter Dive and only Spine Shatter during your 2-minute windows. You can also use 1 charge every minute, just under Lance Charge. That DPS difference is going to be small, but if you're pushing and really want that extra damage, you can try to squeeze it in during the 2-minute window. Just note you have a lot more buttons to push. You'll probably also have a Wormwind Thrust under that 2-minute window. Anything else? Anything else? Oh yeah, use Feint, especially in this raid tier. It sucks if you can't. This is your only mitigation tool for the party. Every little bit helps. Arm's Length, that's your knockback mitigation. True North, you have 3 skills that need a positional. You have, if you're doing the Heaven's Thrust set, you have 2 in a row. If you're doing the Chaotic Spring set, you have 3 in a row. I generally save my True Norths, try to line them up for when I have 3 skills in a row, but again, True North is there for when the boss has to be looking a certain way and you can't get at its flank. There are probably other secret optimization techniques that I am not aware of, but that will get you to 90 to 95% of your maximum power. Is it perfect? No. But this is a pretty simple guide. Let me know if you think... I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. This is your low effort guide for low effort Dragoon. This is Mithril Zenith, signing out.